This episode of Love Larn is sponsored by Scott Bonnar Fabrication and Parts. I want to take you through this front roller today. This is the one of the original front rollers off the 17-inch twin. Basically, we've got the cradle that the axle sits in, passes through the holes on either end, a nut on the end of the shaft, the axle itself. The roller, I believe, it's quite lightweight, but I believe it's aluminium with some nylon or plastic end caps on it. Basically, you can replace the end caps, and there's all sorts of aftermarket options for replacement front rollers and high cut versions and that sort of stuff. And you can also buy new end caps. These things aren't great though. There are no bearings in either end of the roller itself, so the shaft essentially sits in these end caps. Everything sort of spins around, and I'm hoping you can see here, but there's a fair bit of wear on this shaft. It's not round anymore, and there's a definite sort of little dip on this side, sort of all right there, a little dip on that side again, and on this end's not too bad on this shaft. This one, there's definitely some sort of bumps and lumps on that aren't pretty. If you're going to the work to rebuild one of these machines, it probably makes sense to just replace the front roller, probably the cradle as well, and the axle. Probably worth the money. They're not cheap, but I guess the intention in replacing is that you'll get a better cut ultimately, because you won't have any play in this front roller sort of bumping along, and you should just have a smoother run basically, and it'll look nicer as well, so why not, right? Worth noting, just in terms of the cradle, just giving it a spray. The axle is an axle, so it doesn't need any paint. I pop some on the end of this little T section just for aesthetics. And in terms of reassembly, I'm just going to pop a little bit of the Coppery's grease just on these two sections of the shaft, to help everything slide home more than anything. This isn't an area that's going to seize up. It doesn't really probably need any lubrication, but especially being sort of right down low to the ground there, it's an area that's going to attract dirt and that sort of thing. But a little bit of a light grease on there will just keep the rust at bay and help us get this thing in. The other thing I've done in terms of prep for this shaft, I just gave it a light sand back to get rid of some of the rust. Hit it with the rust converter product I use, and just give it a little wipe down. Worth noting as well, the cradle has a small hole and a big hole. Essentially, the T section of the shaft needs to end up on the big hole side, because the little hole receives the smaller section of the shaft. That shaft's going to go in there. I find it's a little bit tricky just sort of feeling your way blindly through that second end cap. So big end's over here. I'll start by passing that through there, and then we'll line up as much as we can with the end cap here, and we'll send that down the line. I'll turn it over now and drop it the rest of the way in. And now I just have to fiddle with it until it wants to go in to where it's supposed to go. It's not impossible because it came out of there, and I know it will go. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do, line up this top section so it straddles that end of the cradle. That retaining nut on there. Essentially, that's our front roller back together now. You can see And there's a bit of side-to-side play. And this thing's sort of just floating, so if I sort of try and mobilize the cradle on my hand, you can see, you know, just how much play there is, top to bottom, side to side, every which way on that thing. So you can imagine, like, if you're rolling along on your grass and the mower's sort of bobbing up and down, the quality of the cut that you're going to get is, you know, debatable. Depends how heavy the machine is and stuff like that as well, I guess. But you know, in general, you might have problems. So, nonetheless, that's the old school front roller back together. For what it's worth, this is the roller that came off the 14-inch solid deck machine, which is an older machine than the 17-inch twin. But it's very similar in terms of the way it's constructed. We've got the sort of T-end to that shaft, front roller itself, and then the end caps. The cradles are identical as far as I know. The only little difference here is the end caps themselves are made of aluminium or some sort of metal. Still no bearings, nothing interesting happening in there. You know, just weighing the two up, I reckon without the cradle even, this 14-inch roller is heavier than the 17-inch roller with the plastic end caps. Got my new front roller here. It's a high cut front roller from Untitled at Trident Mowers, zinc plated. It's got its two bearings in there already, one on either end, and I've got my front roller cradle, which has been powder coated, and I've got a new axle from Untitled as well. Just sort of making sure everything's oriented correctly. I don't think there's an orientation to the roller itself, but the cradle's got a small hole on that side and a big hole on that side. So the axle's going to go through that big front hole, and the threaded section on the end is going to come out the small section of the axle here. What I've got is my molly grease, which I'm going to slather on here as well, just to help with the insertion of that shaft. I'm going to sort of wipe this on. I don't want heaps and heaps on here, but I do want to protect this surface from any corrosion. Not sure the best way to do this, but let's start like this. One of those operations where an extra set of hands would probably come in handy. First little issue, there's probably a bit of powder coating inside that top hole. The bottom one looks alright. Probably should have fit this before I greased it up, but anyway. It looks like what I'm going to need to do is sand off some of the powder coat on the inside of that cradle. I think from memory this is one of Lincoln's cradles as well, so it's you know, it should fit this shaft really well. Got a greasy shaft if anyone wants to hold on to that for me. I've just sanded out the insides of the two holes in this bracket, just using some 80 grit. It only took a second to get that the little bit of powder coating off there. It wasn't too thick, I guess, and that's as you can see, fitting in there now. It's very snug, but that's what we want. So I'll pop this roller in here next and try and get it into the bearing next. I know it goes in there because I've done a trial fit. It's just, it needs to hit at the right angle. You can see it sort of, you know, just dropping right in there. The grease is helping quite a bit compared to when I was doing this dry. So that's come through the other end. I need to sort of line it up with the hole now and kind of do a couple different things at once in terms of getting that through the bearing and through the other end, and that looks like it's, if you can see, that's coming, the threaded section's coming through, so got a little bit of room down here. Just going to give it a few few little taps and see if we get any movement through there. Just trying to support the end of that roll so the shaft isn't bottoming out on the concrete below. So it's definitely moved through. So if, I've been just keeping an eye on the gap down at this end. I can see the grease is sort of squirted out here. So that's basically as far home as it's going to get. I'll grab a washer for this end and a better nut maybe. So how does it look? That's sort of one of my first glimpses of the Aztec silver powder coating against the, in this case, the zinc finish. Also I've got the bronze knob and the bronze height adjuster, the clutch lever knob and the height adjuster knob, which is the original. So that's kind of the color scheme for the mower, and I kind of think it looks alright. Be interesting to see how this thing wears as it's run over grass and everything else. What I've done now is just loosen off the bolts on this top deck a little bit and the sole plate, just enough so that I can get this this cradle into place without bending things too much. The frame on the 17-inch did flex enough to allow me to get this roller into place. Obviously it's welded so it doesn't come apart, but it's also a bit bigger, I suppose. I don't know. It's definitely wider, but anyway, I did have that wiggle room literally to get this guy into place. I've sanded back these two little protrusions on each side of this cradle, little mounting points, pivot points, and I've also sanded back the corresponding holes that they make into. I just used a bit of sandpaper wrapped around a dowel or a pencil. This Aztec silver powder coat's been really proven to be quite tough stuff, so I ended up chucking this in the drill just for a few minutes to whiz it around in there, and that seemed to get the job done quickly. And I'll also do this hole as well for that mount, just to make sure we can get the height adjuster through there all the way. The paint's pretty thick on both components. Worth noting that I'm going to install this side of the cradle into this side of the motor of the mower, so it can we can connect the height adjuster elbow bolt through this end of the cradle, so that it sort of goes like that, basically through that slot. Just painting just a bit of this grease around these pivot points. In an attempt to protect that exposed metal from corrosion. Get our little retaining bolts back in place. These ones are comprised of the little Starlock washer, shake-proof washer, whatever you call it, and a flat washer as well. And just for good measure, there is a bit of powder coat inside the threads on that cradle. So it's what I'm bolting into is the top section of that cradle itself. The ends are threaded to receive these two bolts. And it's worth noting as well that if they're done too tightly, you won't be able to make any height adjustments. So start there for now, I think.